Well, hey guys, welcome back to Flickers of Fear. This is my random ass movie review series. So, remember like the last few Flickers of Fear reviews that I've done? I've kind of been on a newer international horror kick. I did like a Korean film, a French film, like I did all this other stuff. Most of them were on Shudder. And I was kind of going to continue that, but then, just when it came time to watch the movie for this review, I decided to go back in time, go back to a genre that I've been sadly neglecting for quite a while, and that is good old 1970s Giallo goodness. You know how much I love a good Giallo. Now, Shudder actually has a pretty decent selection of, some kind of better known ones and also some more obscure ones. So I kind of just went through and, watched one that sort of just grabbed my attention and that I hadn't seen before, and that would be the 1972 film My Dear Killer. So this was actually directed by Tonino Valerii, and he was mostly known for his spaghetti westerns. Matter of fact, he got his start in the business as an assistant director on the Sergio Leone movie, A Fistful of Dollars. Now, I'm going to say that My Dear Killer is a lot closer to the kind of more police procedural end of the Giallo spectrum rather than, the more operatic, overtly sexualized violence, of some of the better known examples of the genre. So kind of know that going in. I mean, don't get me wrong, it does have a handful of surprisingly brutal kills in it. Because it was kind of going along like a police procedural, and then I was like, holy shit, you know what I mean? Like when the first kill happened. But they're pretty few and far between. And really, most of the runtime is focused on the protagonist, who is a detective, and he's kind of unraveling this highly complicated mystery. Now, this is actually a fantastic film and is actually pretty well regarded by Giallo aficionados. I will say the plot is pretty complex and can be sort of hard to follow unless you're paying like scrupulous attention to like every detail and every word of dialogue. So this is definitely not a movie that you can watch while you're idly scrolling on your phone at the same time. That's what I'm saying. Now, since this is an older movie, 1972, it's about as old as I am, actually, there will be spoilers in this discussion, so if you don't want to know, like, the solution, the outcome of the mystery, then maybe watch the movie first. Like I said, it's on Shudder, and then come back later. Now, the opening sequence of this got me invested right away, just because of the sheer kind of what-the-fuckery of it. So we see this dude. We later find out he's an insurance investigator named Umberto Paradisi. And he has hired an excavator, like a digger thing, for the day to dig around in a swamp for reasons that are not revealed until much further along in the story. Now, it's clear that he's looking for something, maybe some kind of evidence or a body or something like that, but we don't know what it is yet. So as he's standing there on the shore, waiting for the excavator to, excavate, as it does, the person who's operating the vehicle, whose face we don't see, basically takes the digger part of it and like picks Umberto up with the crane, like by his head, you know what I mean? And so the dude is like up there. I'm not really sure how they did this stunt, but it looked really good. It looked kind of real. And I was just like, oh my God, that poor guy. And he's just kind of like struggling in midair, like, with his legs up here like that and his head like in this digger thing, in the claw mechanism, So long story short, Umberto is beheaded by the excavator. And, he falls out and his head falls out separate. It's pretty cool. And then the operator, like, gets the fuck out of Dodge. Now, the cops, when they arrive, are pretty mystified by the situation, as it would be. And this is, like, not as they do the investigation, they find out that the man who was hired out to, drive the excavator, he's been working for this rental company for, like, a long time, like, many years. And he seemed totally competent and completely normal. Like, he didn't really seem like someone who would say, pop a dude's head off like a wine bottle cork. I mean, even accidentally. Now, not long after this, the man who had operated the excavator is found hanging in a barn, an apparent suicide. Now, our main character, who kind of comes in to the main action at this point, is a very shrewd police commissioner named Luca Peretti. He's actually played by George Hilton, who was in another one of my favorite Giallo films, The Case of the Scorpion's Tail. I don't remember if I ever did a video review of it. I probably did. But he was in that too. He was also in a bunch of Westerns. So Luca insists that the man was actually murdered and explains like why at the scene, like why he thinks that. So that sort of makes him delve even further into what the decapitated insurance investigator Umberto Paradisi was up to, and why someone would kill both him and, evidently, like, the guy who was hired to kill him. Like, they killed that person too, and he's just like, what the fuck is going on with that? So it turns out that Paradisi was working on a cold case that was like the kidnapping of a little girl named Stefania Maroney. I'm not entirely sure like how long ago it happened. It wasn't that long ago, but it was a while back. So her dad was this big like rich industrialist type dude. I think his name was Alessandro. So the kid was abducted while she was playing out in the, gardens in front of the house. And the kidnappers asked for a ransom. I think it was 1,000,000 lira, which what's that, like $10? I'm not really sure. I tease Italy. But but yeah, I don't know how much that was back in 1972. Now, Alessandro, the dad, he actually offers to take the money to the drop point himself, like following the kidnappers' exact instructions as you would. But during the course of this endeavor, the kidnappers actually beat the snot out of him and abduct him too. And then both him and his daughter are locked in this bunker thing, and they both eventually starve to death. So Umberto, the headless, the insurance investigator, he had discovered a new lead in this case and was using this information to essentially blackmail members of Stefania's family into paying him to reveal what he had found out. You know what I mean? Kind of a dick move. Now, after our hero, Commissioner Luca Peretti, figures all of this out, he goes to question members of the family and their servants and all that other stuff. Now, in true Giallo fashion, they're all shifty as hell in one way or another. Stefania's mom she's kind of understandably become something of a basket case since her daughter died. She kind of talks as though Stefania is still alive and is just away at school and is going to be back soon and stuff like that. There's also this weird uncle named Oliviero who lost his hand in the war, and he has this real cranky-ass wife who's always bitching. And then there's another relative or family friend or something. It wasn't clear what his relationship to them was. And he's very clearly implied to be like a creepy old pedo. And just a heads up, there is quite a shocking, I was shocked by it actually because I did not expect it, where the cops are like questioning the creepy pedo dude, and this naked little girl just like wanders into his art studio. She was modeling for him, and I was like, wow, you would not get away with that nowadays. Now, as if all of this intrigue wasn't enough, even more murders begin to pile up, and pile up they do. This has a fairly high body count. So the next person to get it is Umberto's wife, who is actually lured to the post office to get something out of her husband's safety deposit box, and then she gets strangled by somebody like in broad daylight. Like a couple people kind of see it, but they don't see the person, you know what I mean? Now, the commissioner, Luca Peretti, he finds a scrap of paper like clutched in her hand, like because they find her dead. And the killer had, clearly attempted to take this paper, but a fragment of it was left behind, like in her fist. So this scrap of paper turns out to contain part of a child's drawing and the partial stamp of like a local Catholic school. So this leads Luca to Stefania's former teacher, whose name is Paolo Rossi. Now, while they're going through Stefania's school notebooks, they find a page that was torn out. And it turns out that the drawing that the killer was so keen to get his hands on was just a picture of a house, like with a kind of funny looking thing sticking out of the roof. Like there was nothing really exciting about it. So Luca is like really frustrated because he can't really see the significance of this drawing or why the killer would even want it, and why he would kill somebody over it, presumably. Now, shortly afterward, the teacher, Paola, she is also horribly killed with a circular saw in, again, quite a brutal scene. There's also this kind of garbage-picking old hobo dude named Mattia, as I think his name. And he lives in this house that looks just like the one in Stefania's drawing with the weird shit like coming out of the roof. And it's also situated right on the shore of the swamp where Umberto, the headless investigator, was doing the excavating that, ended so badly for him. Now, Mattia eventually gets murdered as well. He gets savagely beaten to death, like with a little religious statue or a little like Chinese statue or something like that. So after all of this convoluted investigating and interrogating and whatnot, Luca finally has an epiphany when he visits the bunker where Stefania and her dad died. He's able to deduce that Stefania had attempted to get help or identify her killer before she died by throwing something out of this little slit in the bunker wall. And this caused this object to kind of go rolling down the hill and into the swamp below, or that's what was supposed to happen anyway. So this, we're led to assume, is why Umberto was digging in the swamp at the beginning of the movie, like he was looking for this. We find out, though, that the item that Stefania threw, which turns out to be like a round mirror, about a foot wide, never even made it to the swamp because it was found by Mattia the hobo, who just put it in his house without really realizing the significance of it or like where it had come from. He just found it like laying on the ground because it didn't roll all the way to the swamp. Now, the killer later tries to murder Mattia's sort of girlfriend, who's this older lady who comes and hangs out with him all the time. Now, she had eventually taken a liking to the mirror, like seeing it in her house and like hung it up in, seeing it in Mattia's house, and then she hung it up in her house. And then the killer kind of comes after her. But actually, Luca is able to kind of intervene and save her at the last minute and like run the killer off. And then at the very end, there's a very Columbo-like scene where Luca kind of gathers all the family members together in this big living room and gives this long, threatening monologue about the killer and about what shitheels all of them are and all of this other kind of stuff. So he does this really dramatic demonstration, like making each one of them look at their own reflections in this fateful mirror, you know what I mean? Before revealing that the murderer is, in fact, the one-handed wonder, Uncle Oliviero. He didn't really have a great motive. I think that was one of the things that bothered me, is he didn't really have a super compelling motive. He basically just murdered the little girl and Alessandro because he was jealous because Alessandro had all the money, I guess. That was kind of like the only motive. And then he murdered all the other people too, just to tie up loose ends. But I was like, that seems a tad excessive, bro. I mean, you killed a lot of people. So the final shot of the film is the back of the mirror, where Stefania had drawn like a stick figure man with one hand missing. So it was pretty obvious to whoever found this mirror that it was Uncle Oliviero that she was talking about, because who else does she know that only has one hand, you know what I mean? So as I mentioned, if you're kind of more into the more, I don't know, lurid, you know, boobs and blood style Giallo movies, this one might seem like a little staid and a little like slow moving for your taste. I feel like it's kind of far more centered on our lead investigator character and his attempts to sort of tease out the truth surrounding this very, very intricate murder mystery. But it is extremely well written and, you know, very, very well constructed. You just have to like stay on your toes and focus on each interaction and every new clue, or you'll quickly become very lost in the very labyrinthine plot. I mean, I kind of lost the thread a couple of times, and I was paying like pretty close attention, so keep that in mind. Maybe I'm just a dummy, I don't know. So I would recommend this to fans of kind of the more investigative Giallo movies and whatever they call those other poliziotteschi or whatever they call like their more police procedural. This is a lot more like that, but there are like some fairly brutal kills in it. There's just not that many of them. So I feel like My Dear Killer doesn't get a huge amount of discussion, but it's really good. It's a really good example of the genre, and it's well worth watching for sure. So if you have Shudder, definitely check it out. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon Prime or something like that too. And that will do it for this Flickers of Fear. Thanks as always for watching. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, and comment, and all of that good stuff. And I will see you again on the next one. Bye.